Welcome, Nico. How are you?
Good morning. Um, I'm very well, thank you. And what's about you, Andy?
I'm all right, thank you. Nico, maybe you'd be kind enough before we begin the conversation proper just to introduce WindRiver and say something about your role and in the organization and maybe your history too, if relevant.
Yes. Okay, super. So good morning, everyone, and good afternoon. I don't know wherever you are listening and following this conversation. My name is Nicola Marziliano, as Andy said. I'm based in Milan, in Italy. I'm in charge of the EMEA Telco sales for WindRiver. In WindRiver since 2020, an interesting journey, an interesting company, an interesting period for our industry. Uh, who is WindRiver? WindRiver is a very well long established company that is very famous and known for real-time operating systems. So one of the capability that WindRiver has as a background in software production is that we run technology that cannot fail. One of the latest example is the Artemis 2 that everybody maybe have been watching. Again, the mankind traveling around the moon just recently, and that's operating system supporting the astronaut and spaceship was running on operating system of WindRiver, so the VxWorks. So I would say pretty proud of that. So that is exactly the DNA the company has.
Well, that is pretty exciting stuff, really, isn't it? Okay, well, thank you for that. So I think our previous speaker, Daniel, established, as if it needed establishing, that telco is becoming cloud native. It's not a matter of if and why, it's much more about when and how. So maybe we could start by looking at some of the implications of this major industry shift and give us some idea about how Wind River views this whole, well, scenario. Seems a bit of an
Mhm.
understatement, really.
Yes, as you said, the 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 discussion about the cloudification of the network is not anymore a question of if. It's more is more about how. And one of the emerging, I was attending a couple of panel in the recent past, and I've seen some fellows presenting on this topic. The real challenge is not how to cloudify. So Kubernetes and the cloud native, it works. So it's not anymore a question if that is the path to be followed, but it's more about how do you operate from the core to edge. And operating those cloud native networks is becoming the challenge. What WindRiver distinguish itself compared to others is that the the need for cloud native, it's requiring mission critical real-time networks, highly distributed cloud. It is exactly matching the requirement for a cloud native technology, which is pretty different from the generic IT enterprise cloud solution, which the market is pretty full of solution around generic enterprise IT. And one of the, if I have to leave one final sentence on this topic, running a Kubernetes or containers cloud native application is not per se a challenge. One of the major challenges that telco operator are facing is the fact that you need to build something that is a telco grade, reliance, but also automated, built in a design phase, not afterwards. One of the major challenges, maybe we can discuss later more in the details, is that sometimes you start building and then you discover you need to have operation planned into, and that is exactly one of the major gaps.
Okay, well, that kind of brings us on to our next question. Um, Again, it's common, and our first speaker emphasized this, that it's common to focus on the migration, to focus on day zero and day one. And then actually, really, the big thing is what happens on day two and going forwards. Okay, you've done it. Now what?
Indeed, indeed. Yes, and that's why I was mentioning the fact that operation and DevOps matter. So you need to have a technology, and I think that the technology is one of the driver. It's obvious that you need to have a that's technology that is able to be highly geo-distributed, so which is one of the typical bottleneck if you need to go in a cloud native environment, because then the cloud will be has to be not only stateless and capable to run a container, but need to work from core to run, and probably to run into the far edge of the networks, which means and especially now the AI explosion will drive even more further down the requirement for the intelligent to be at a very far edge. So what we call intelligent edge from WindRiver. So that will drive a certain architectural requirement, but not only. The cloud native need to be different from other IT solution that has to be deterministic, has to be zero touch, has to be 6 9, has to be, maybe eventually protecting data sovereignty, which is one of the additional new drivers that are there. And all these cannot be managed after you deploy. So you need to get these to be done at the very beginning in the designing phase. And so DevOps will be super critical for operationalize the telco cloud.
Okay, so no, don't focus only on the wedding, think about the marriage.
Absolutely. Yes, that's the point.
Okay. Um, Telcos are maybe going more slowly with their
Mm,
cloud adoption and in the process of becoming cloud native. Now, you deal with telcos all the time.
yeah.
What do you think? What do you think maybe is a reason for this delay or the slowness? Well, probably it's quite hard to do, clearly, but what's your experience
See,
with
yeah,
customers?
yeah. Well, it will be unfair to say that there's only one single, or there is
Oh yeah,
someone, I think there is a mix of everyone has its own part of the vendors, the operator, is in generally the technology and the readiness. Um, if I look at the last 5 to 10 years, uh, operator has been containerizing and cloudifying their network. So 5 out of 10 operator definitely they start introducing cloud native application, but only probably 3 out of 10 are really able to operate those cloud native at scale. And maybe if I think about who has really automated or improved the efficiency, is maybe one or two. So just recently, I've been talking with some of those leaders in operation, some CSPs that has been really remarkably changing the way they are managing and implementing the networks. But I would say there are just few out of the tens, and that is because there are different aspects. One of those, for example, one example is that, as I said, 50% of the CSP has deployed a cloud native solution because maybe the 5G has been accelerating that adoption. But in reality, there is still isolated in a certain domain. So, for example, on the core side, yes, it happened. But on the run, if you think about the cloud run and O run, maybe only 50%, 1.5, has been start deploying some cloudification at the radio side, which is leading to a situation where at the end of the day, it's still scattered. So the depth of the deployment to be cloud native is still limited. So you see cloud native island rather than a full deployed at scale. The second one for me, as I said before, is not only technology, it's also by operation. A lot of operator, 35%. I remember that was a recent interview, probably from Analysis Mason. They said they can be operationally mature, but in reality, there are a lot of blockers. So they identify that end-to-end visibility is still missing. So multi-vendor lifecycle is complex. So you have a different vendors, different application, everyone with different style and approach, and then of course is creating complexity. And then also you have skills and organizational silos. So all these creating a kind of bottleneck to the full adoption. So that is clearly a limit. And then finally, last but not least, I was again recently following one of the partners with whom we are working now, VMO2 in the UK. So they clearly said they are implementing a Telco cloud program, but um, if you think about all the vendors and and the more you move to the cloud native, more cloud native application means probably two release per year, or probably three or four drops, because there will be a continuous upgrade. And those, and if you multiply that, this is just for one vendor or one application, then you have five vendors and then probably four application each. So you go to 100 of those continuous upgrade. And interesting, I was listening to that presentation, and it ended up to be maybe you do an upgrade per day to stay in a year long, because 200 will be one per day. So if you are in a CI/CD, CT/CS, that is a complex things, and that's bring back to my original topic, which is you need by design to bring operation back on the designing phase, not afterwards. Because if you don't do that at the designing phase, then it's going to be super complicated to manage the networks afterwards.
Okay, so two big things from that. The first is the end to end is difficult and largely hasn't happened yet. And
Yep,
that trying to retrofit something, if you don't build it into the design, is not gonna be helpful, to say the least.
indeed, correct, correct.
Okay. So this sounds like an awful lot to deal with. Can you give us some examples, Nico, of when you've seen customers being successful
Mm.
with cloud native networks?
Yeah. Well, it's limited, of course, to my experience. I cannot pretend to give too many examples, but at least the way I've seen so far, uh, there are some good news. So not everyone is behind or lagging into this deployment. I think many has been implementing, testing, moving to the next level of cloudification. I'm just bringing a couple of those examples I've been personally seeing. One of those is, for example, in the US, Boost Mobile. Everybody knows has been by design at the very beginning implementing. Well, they have a luxury to be a greenfield. But they design by design to they implemented the cloud native networks, and recently they decided to swap one of the vendors, which, by the way, WindRiver contributed to replace, and because of the cloud native technology, but as well as the setup of the organization they had, that was possible to swap, an incredible number of sites operationally managed in 3 months. So it's something that, if you think about normally in any legacy environment, changing the supply or swapping certain technology from one to the others, it takes not month, 2, 3 months. It takes a year or probably even more. So automation and operation integrated together in the design phase brings immediately the value. Another example is a DTAG. We are not directly involved, but I was listening recently. Deutsche Telekom presented their German cloud core implementation they have done, which is horizontalizing the technology so that they are able to have from the infrastructure layer to the application to the operation and management, a completely decouple technology. But the probably the magic ingredient following the Deutsche Telekom presentation and is not only technological, but is exactly back to my private topic, which is the DevOps. So the way they implemented was from the design phase, they put the operation and the people and the process on track so that they can interface between the partner, between teams, between people, and having the right way of working. In the past, when you have a lot of legacy, you typically tend to be in a vertical silos where the vertical, manage and deploy the solution based on the vendor, based on the technology. When you go horizontally, there are different kind of challenge, and Deutsche Telekom has been able to, and they are now implementing the first application. They are not yet fully deployed all the application, but I think that they are on a fantastic great path to deliver high value to their client and to the organization. So, which is, I would say, is demonstrating is true and is possible. And there are a few others. For example, we demonstrated at the Mobile World Congress that a predictive operation for RAN using AI, it's possible. So you're not only reacting to the RAN performance and KPIs, but you can predict. So that you can have a fault-driven operation that is automatically put a diagnosis of the fault or the situation and taking action or indicating to the operation the action to be taken. And that is automatically implementing from the design into the operation the capability to. So I would say there are a few examples that is possible and is doable and has been either implemented, like I mentioned in the case of Deutsche Telekom or Boost, as well as demonstrated by us in the run.
So the first instance was United Telecom, was it US
Yes.
Telecom? Is
Yeah.
that the MVNO?
Now it's becoming, yes. Now, yes. Yeah.
So, because that's such an extraordinary example, actually, of integration and
Yeah.
agility. It's okay, interesting. Yeah, I advise you all to look that up. Okay. Um, so, what are your key learnings from your experience and your observations in the market regarding cloud native networks and the progress various parties have made towards them?
Yeah. Let me maybe repeat a bit and summarize. Somehow it came across by what I said before. So definitely one is think about devs op. Still a lot of operation are managed separated from the engineering team. So organization are still silos driven. So you have an engineering team, you have an operation team, you have a vendor management team. So everything just in a silos where you hand over from one to the others. Some operator, especially cloud native, will drive and force to do DevOps. So teams need to be together because the same team that is in charge of architecting the solution need to manage that solution. It is not anymore a luxury to have it. The second thing is that there has to be considering automation as an embedded deliverable. So it's not just an option that, oh, I build something and then eventually I will automate. Automate has to be part of. And my example before about AI is clearly one of the example. Interestingly, and recently I've been again following a couple of sessions about AI and how AI will drive the level 4 automation that everybody is expecting to be deployed soon. Automation will be definitely one of the next requirements for cloud native. Um, the Probably the other final is that yes, the cloud native it's a pervasive in the networks. It's not only for one domain like core, it's not only for one domain like RAN or transport, it's all across networks. And to make a fully automated, fully AI autonomous networks, that has to be implemented across the board. And that is probably my last takes is not the CSP because I spoke a lot about the CSP responsibility, but it's also the industry and the vendor responsibility. So every vendor, every players need to play its own role in enabling and enhancing the cloud native capability into the networks. There are still a lot of legacy. That's legacy in the networks has been sedimented through the decades of the telco world, and that is very hard to be taken out, but also vendor need to help operator to remove that legacy. Otherwise, we will, we talk about the future, but we still leave the past.
So, what would you say your maybe, I don't know, top three tips are for next steps? What would you say?
Well, if as we started the conversation, so cloud native is unavoidable. So we have to. And the market is demanding for that. The user, the client are demanding for that. client, which is us, huh? It's like me, you, and so it's not someone, you know, somewhere.
Yeah, yeah,
I was talking with a friend yesterday. They say, well, listen, there are still a lot of things that need to be improved. Even the capability, for example, you just switch off your phones when you just land from in an airport, and then you want to have immediately, the prompt from the operator. You want to have immediately the service, so you are not anymore compromising in quality and speed, in connectivity, in availability of the service. So that has to be something that no one is compromising anymore. So, and if that is the client requirement, how do you do that in a way that you do in a zero touch? Again, another client of us, Lisa, has been historically talking about zero touch provision in zero touch operation. They have a zero knock people, personnel. But I recently listened to them, and they have set an ambition to be in the next 2 years with zero ticket, zero incident, which is pretty tough. I mean, proclaiming
pretty
to have a
amazing, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, of course, it's an aspirational target, but how do you get there? You need to have a cloud native infrastructure that will allow you to be fully automated and eventually autonomously managed. So with the NAI. So that is going to be unavoidable. The second call for action for me is organizational change. If someone has not been doing that till now or completely done it, I think that probably they need to go on the drawing boards, not only for the technology upgrades, but also for the organizational change. So I wouldn't abuse and use the term of transformation, but in a way, what has been long due topic in the industry has to be made now. A cloud native will not compromise if you're not transforming your organization. So that will be, for me, the second. And the third, as I said, a call for action for the vendor. I will definitely um, suggest the vendor to collaborate and to be more future thinker, removing the legacy and moving from the past into new technology. So embracing the new technology as soon as possible. Uh, I know that there are some business driver beyond maintaining legacy, and it's not necessarily someone's fault, but yes, definitely the faster we adopt that changes in our portfolio, the better will be the industry takeoff, and the industry takeoff will benefit everyone of the actors in the market, including the client, of course.
Okay, I've just one comment before we've got a question from the audience. Yes, I remember talking to somebody at Telefonica Deutschland who said that backward compatibility is the single biggest inhibitor of innovation.
Indeed. Yes.
And,
No,
stop looking backwards. Mind you,
yeah,
Telefonica Germany is very forward looking and has been an amazing pioneer with cloud. So
indeed.
that made a big impression on me because it was said with considerable feeling. Okay, so a member of our audience has asked, Nico, what is your view on sovereign cloud adoption and reducing public cloud footprint? Hot topic, tricky though.
Mm, okay. Well, maybe if I got correct the question, the second part, I don't see that there is necessarily a reduction. On the contrary, there will be more
What's
and
a public
more.
cloud?
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. So it's probably the public cloud reduction will be impacted by the sovereignty cloud. There is a big debate, and of course there are different opinion about how much the sovereignty cloud is for real, is a real demand, and how is going to be implemented. I have to say that based on the conversation with the client, with the partners inside the industry, the AI-driven requirement will ask for more data sovereignty and data that are secured. Um, One of the hot topic that came across interestingly for me was also the cybersecurity. I mean, the more AI the more AI agent will be able to. You mentioned before in the previous conversation, Annie, about agent talking to other agents, which have a conversation that is more funny than the human having, chit chat. So the more you have agent talking and asking for data, that has to be in a secured data lake, or in a secured area. So how do you guarantee that the data that you're getting are secured? Point number one. Number two is that these in the dark web, there are still a lot of agent AI that are able to snake into and analyze your software and eventually identify holes and glitch of your software. So how do you protect yourself? So all these requirements will drive a kind of sovereignty cloud. The way and the shape of this sovereignty cloud, being in a private cloud or in an hybrid cloud, that's probably can be figured out. But definitely, these are the requirements that the market is asking.
Yes, I was just quickly looking up while you were speaking, Nico. Recent research from Omdia was launched this month actually that has found that more than 100 countries have got some kind of data sovereignty or localization laws, but often there are conflicting regulation or law even within the same country, and there's an enormous amount of confusion about what sovereignty, data sovereignty
Indeed.
means. And
Yes, indeed.
as a result, the report concluded businesses are facing diverse and sometimes conflicting rules on data protection, localization, and cross border data flows. The fragmented landscape also raises compliance costs and operational complexity, which multinational businesses must navigate. And that's slightly to one side of what we were talking about, but I think it probably applies. And I think the whole issue of sovereignty, cloud
Yes.
sovereignty, is complex and not terribly well understood. Well, I think we've all but run out of time. Is there anything that you would like to add just before we close?
Not really. I think we cover almost everything. The only eventually, if I have to just to advise, is that in case anyone is interested to further, develop some ideas and opinion, just please feel free to reach me out or Annie from Mobile Europe, for next conversation. Yeah.
Indeed, Nico, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you too.